country, in 15 or 20 years' time, the black man will have the whip hand over the white man. Well, I can already hear the chorus of execration. How dare I say such a horrible thing? How dare I stir up trouble and inflame feelings by repeating such a conversation? My answer is that I do not have the right not to do so. Those whom the gods wish to destroy, they first make mad. We must be mad, literally mad as a nation, to be permitting the annual inflow of some 50,000 dependents who are, for the most part, the material of the future growth of the immigrant-descended population. It is like watching a nation busily engaged in heaping up its own funeral pyre.
Much of Powell's speech was not recorded. The following extract is read by an actor.
They found their wives unable to obtain hospital beds in childbirth, their children unable to obtain school places, their homes and neighborhoods changed beyond recognition. They began to hear, as time went by, more and more voices which told them that they were now the unwanted.
Does any of that sound familiar, folks? That was Enoch Powell, a British politician back during the 1960s, who had the most outrageous racist ideas that unfettered immigration would be a problem for his nation. Welcome. This is All Minus One. Please like, share, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Go check out my links below in the description because I am on other platforms, whatever platform you may be watching this on. YouTube, I would say, is my primary, only because it's where most of my growth will come from. However, I know that the conversations that I have with you through this venture of mine will eventually get canceled over on YouTube, or likely will, or at least shadow banned greatly. The fact that I'm bringing up Enoch Powell now is probably a great censor to their algorithms, and they won't necessarily like it. So go follow me elsewhere. Also, every Wednesday at 7 p.m., I have a live show on another channel called The Ends Justify the Memes. We go live on DLive as well as YouTube, and we will be starting on Trovo here soon, and whatever else might be allowing for streaming in the near future. So guys, let's get into it. Let's get into the conversation. And the conversation is about immigration, of course. And I bring this up only because the United States has been dealing with this issue for a long time as well. And much like England, there is no rhyme or reason behind it that seems to make sense in the mainstream. It isn't that. It isn't the mainstream narratives, folks. It is a greater narrative that is behind the whole scheme of things based on the globalist power structure and the agendas of the world governments. And perhaps you might say off the bat, Bill, that's a crazy notion. And I would say, you are naive and ignorant to the reality of the world, because I can promise you these folks have been writing about it extensively for over 100 years. Not only are they writing about it, they talk about it openly. They talk about it in speeches. George W. Bush, that is H.W. Bush, back in the early 90s, said the New World Order repeatedly in speeches talked about that this was the great ambition of man throughout time, was to bring about this new global government. And the primary agenda that they are using to get people to go along with it is the climate crisis. Mother Earth is being destroyed. That's what environmentalism is primarily about from the leftist progressive perspective. It is about scaring folks to unify them into this one world nation of authoritarianism and collectivism. That, my friends, is just quickly summed up what is going on. Now, you could say, but Bill, there are all these other factors. Yes, for the average person, yes. But the people behind the scenes pulling the strings, that's what it's about. And if they could, a lot of people have speculated about it, they would fake an alien invasion in order to bring the world together. Perhaps one day they will. We will see. We shall see. So, in any case, immigration. We're going to watch this real quick from old Fox News. Brett Baer.
Handling of the Trump immigration program underway tonight. The Biden administration is allowing tens of thousands of asylum seekers into the U.S. until their claims are heard. National correspondent William Lachaness looks at the impact of this move from Nogales, Arizona.
We do not have the resources available to house and accommodate these migrants within our community.
An urgent plea to President Biden from the Democratic mayor of Del Rio, Texas.
I am pleading and requesting with you to please put a halt to any measures regarding the release of immigrants awaiting court dates.
Friday, the Biden administration dumped President Trump's Remain in Mexico policy, releasing 25 asylum seekers into the U.S.
Now, you see this video footage. This is what happens. People on the left live in a naive reality, in an idealistic world, in a utopian fantasy. And they think that folks migrating is just this wonderful thing and easy and simple. It usually is when it's a legal process, when it's a refugee, a true refugee process. It is not when people are moving for economic reasons because they believe, I'm going to go to America because I have some fantasy about America, like many of you have fantasies, or many people out there have fantasies about socialist utopias, and you think, I'm going to move to America because it's the greatest country in the world. And there's all this opportunity because all I've ever seen are TVs and movies. And I don't understand the reality that many citizens of America live just like this now already. And that we already have our jobs being leached to other nations. Now, the libertarian side of that is well, they should be able to be free and do whatever they want. True, but if you are destroying the economy of where the people are at, and that's where your business is at, then you're not really helping out the locals where you're at, are you? You might be helping out those in the other nations that are cheaper, and you could say, well, but Bill, and trust me, I know the economic arguments. You might say, Bill, but that makes the products cheaper for Americans. Yes. But if Americans don't have jobs, you know what? It doesn't matter how cheap the products are. If we are not manufacturing or creating, we are not going to be in a robust situation to have a strong society, because if something is cut off or taken away from us, say like production of medicines in China after a great pandemic occurs, we're going to have problems. There's going to be issues. We need to create and develop as much in-house as possible. You don't go out into the world and take care of the world when your own home is a mess, right? It's a Jordan Petersonism, right? Clean your room, folks. Clean your room. Take care of your own mess first before you go out and try to tell others how to take care of theirs. In fact, it's just a pretty good common principle. Why would you listen to a fitness trainer that is 300 pounds overweight? You wouldn't. Not anyone with any common sense would. Say, well, Bill, but he has the certificate. I don't care, because he doesn't practice what he preaches. He doesn't believe in it, apparently, because he doesn't live it. You must live your principles, folks. So, yes. People come here and based on a fantasy because they're foreigners, much like you have fantasies about foreign nations. They don't know, and they believe that there are promises that are to come. So, real quick, let's listen to, here on the Dick Cavett Show, Enoch Powell, just a little interview real quick.
I'm allowing a decent interval to pass so we can now talk. I guess the immigration issue was the thing, as you know, that changed your life and made your name probably better known throughout the world than it had been before that. And when you made a speech, as a result of which you were called a racist by many of your own papers and many in the States who reported it. And it's easy to see reading the speech why you could be called that. Do you understand why people call you a racist?
It is one of the modern terms of abuse, and the term of abuse is the more effective, the less defined it is. Then you can throw it at anybody and anything. But I find this word race very irrelevant in the British context. Indeed, it's rather a word which we've borrowed from America, because in the States, the term race simply means Negro or non-Negro. Now, that, of course, is the form in which this sort of conflict or potential conflict primarily presents itself in the United States. But that's a very different background, a very different origin from the problem which we have here. I wonder if you'd allow me a minute or two to sketch in the background here in Britain, because it is unique in the world, and one gets it wrong if one imports ideas from anywhere else. You've got to go back to the fact that alone of all the countries in the world, we never had a definition of ourselves. There was never such a thing as a United Kingdom citizen. Unlike the United States, which has its own citizenship, France, Germany, we never had that. We were British subjects. We were subjects of the king or the queen, as the case might be. Consequently, as the British dominions expanded, automatically, everybody was born in or belonged to any part of the British dominions, hundreds of millions of human beings, were all British subjects. And in the law of this country, there was never any distinction between one British subject and another. There was no way of labeling the British subject who, if I may use the word, belonged to this country. Now, this was, had many advantages when Britain was the center of an empire. And if the numbers from the rest of the empire who availed themselves of this identification remained small, then no problem arose. But the rest of the empire had its own citizenships. An Englishman wasn't allowed to go and settle in India or Jamaica. On the contrary, they had their own very strict demarcations and definitions. And now, after the Second World War, there was a big technical revolution that took place, and that was air travel, which made the movement of masses of people from one continent to another possible on a scale which had never been contemplated before.
And he goes on, but you can see, and the reason why I wanted this to be played is because there are distinct reasons that he has thought through that had motivated him to make this speech and about keeping the British Isles the British Isles. Now, the problem is even worse today because we've had many years of war in the Middle East, and therefore that has been an excuse for globalists to, say, bring in migrants and refugees. Yet most of them are not. They're literally economic migrants. So let's go here. I played this earlier in my quick shot videos. This was Joe Biden up in a 2006 at a Rotary Club talking about what he thought of immigration.
The country that is an erstwhile democracy where they have the greatest disparity in wealth. It's one of the wealthiest countries in the hemisphere. And because of a corrupt system that exists in Mexico, there is the 1% of the population at the top, a very small middle class, and the rest is abject poverty. Folks, I voted for a fence. I voted, unlike most Democrats, and some of you won't like it, I voted for 700-mile fence. But let me tell you, we can build a fence 40 stories high, unless you change the dynamic in Mexico. And you will not like this, and punish American employers who knowingly violate the law when, in fact, they hire illegals. Unless you do those two things, all the rest is window dressing.
And Biden is not completely wrong here, actually. He is somewhat right, although the problem in Mexico is largely created by the U.S. as well. Of course, they have their cartel issue and whatever else. But we also have a large welfare state for legal and illegal immigrants. And I know there's a lefty out there that's going to say otherwise. Well, I'm going to show you in a bit how you're wrong, because it is absolutely a truth that illegal immigrants are able to get onto the welfare system by some means or another. Whether legally or illegally, they do it. And that is incentive for them to come in. The other issue here that Biden is talking about is the employers. Well, this is usually what lefties will point to. Well, if you cut off those incentives, well, unless you're going to be up in business's butt all the time, and I know that's what you like because you're all a bunch of centralized authoritarians that think you need to control everything and everyone needs to act exactly the same. You don't like independence. You don't like free thought. You don't like anything outside of your scope of the world, and that's unfortunate. It's actually a stagnation of things. It's interesting that to a progressive, the idea is that progressivism is moving forward and the world is moving forward. And anyone who's on the right, believes in tradition or whatever, they're stuck in the past. And forward progress is always good. And that's not necessarily true. Sometimes there is a thing called contentment that you need to understand. Here's the other problem with the progressives, that they look at these issues as material issues because that's what leftists do. They are materialists. Money and wealth. I can guarantee you, my friends, money and wealth do not provide happiness. So you may talk about the material conditions in Mexico not being as good as they are here in the United States, which I wouldn't even agree with because obviously a lot of Americans go to Mexico to live. Of course, Bernie Sanders makes the same argument that Joe Biden makes here of Mexico about the United States, by the way. And like, I have a friend, a pretty good friend of mine who's immigrated here with his family when he was 16. And he's in his late 30s now, and he would love to go back to Mexico because he loves it there. He visits every year, but he's got kids here. He has he had a marriage he got into when he was younger, and he had kids, and he's no longer married. But he's not going to go move to Mexico and never see his kids again. He's going to be a dad. So, like, you have to understand that a lot of the framing the left puts this into is just utter ridiculousness. My buddy knows that materially, the United States is going to be better off generally. You know why he likes Mexico? You know why he likes going back home? Because it's a slower, easier, more traditional life. That's why. Because materialism is not the end-all, be-all. And that's why Marx was an idiot and got everything wrong. At least one of the reasons. There are multiple. So, from Jacobin, get my little dark mode on here. It says Joe Biden, anti-immigration enabler. It says Joe Biden has a bad past in all sorts of ways. Here's another one. He spent his career helping build the very deportation state now in Trump's hands. It says it looks like Joe Biden is running with Beltway insiders, Democrat bigwigs talking up his presidential chances. The former vice president looks to be the candidate to beat in the 2020 primaries. And this was like in 2019, they wrote this article. Apart from Clinton's inept campaigning and inability to connect with voters, Biden shares many of the same red flags that led a large share of the Democrat base to look with suspicion on the former Secretary of State. The Democratic Party, I don't know where this Democratic Party came from. It's the Democrat Party. Democrat Party. It's the name of the party. There's no cratic in it. It's weird. And I get to say it too, but it's not. It's the Democrat Party, period. Anyways, of today is a different beast from the one under Obama, while the last Democratic president did everything he could to triangulate on immigration. From deporting record numbers of people to militarizing the border, electoral considerations and the rise of Donald Trump and the increasing power of the activist movement have led to a party to place immigrants' rights at the center of their political vision. Being soft on immigration is no longer a liability for a Democrat, but being tough on the issue may well be. And that is essentially the crux of it. And it goes into it. I have a lot of stuff to go over today, so I'm not going to read through this article. But Jacobin, being a far leftist publication, is very honest. That's why I talk, I'll read Jacobin, guys. Again, this was from, looks like April or May, or sorry, no, April of 2019. And in any case, then we have PolitiFact, which I hate, but actually doing a decent job here. It says, Weston Pangio, I don't even know who this guy is, says Joe Biden voted to expand deportations and indefinite detention for immigrants at multiple times. And PolitiFact says mostly true. Half true. In fact check, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it drew more than 120,000 interactions on Facebook, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know what they're fact-checking. Biden's immigration votes in 1996. The bill in question represented a pendulum swing 1 decade after President Ronald Reagan legalized the status of 1.7 million people. The Democrat Party took harsher stance against illegal immigration amid a rapid increase in arrivals and public opinion polls. And you can go back and look at what Bill Clinton had to say about this. And a lot of the Democrats in the early 2000s, the 90s and early 2000s, they were very much against illegal immigration, at least with their words. Their actions say something different. We're dealing with the consequences of the law passed in 96. Rick Sue, an immigration law professor at the University of North Carolina School of Law, Democrats from Clinton to Biden are still dealing with the legacy of supporting these bills today from critics on the left. But what is the issue? Because they didn't really do anything. So the question is what are we dealing with? That they just weren't like pro-immigration, that they had border patrol? How far left do we need to go? Prior to the mid-1990s, the annual number of deportations had not exceeded 50,000 for decades. But with the passage of the 1996 legislation, this threshold was breached, and by the turn of the century, deportations were running just under 200,000 annually, they wrote. Well, if someone is here illegally and they break laws, which the initial law is the immigration, of course, illegally, but aside from that, crimes are usually why they get deported. What's the big deal? We can't just support everybody in the world that wants to come here. It's better for them to build up their own nation, for us to make our own decisions, our own manifest destiny into how we are going to direct our nation. And I have said many a times, I'm like most people, I don't really care about legal immigration as long as it makes sense. But perhaps for a while, we should just shut down everything. Just shut down everything and say, we're going to figure this out. We're going to figure our own problems out. I think if we did that for 3, 4, 5 years, we could see a renaissance in this nation. I'm not saying, that it's an immigration alone issue, but I'm saying that that's one less thing we'd have to focus on. And we could start working on our infrastructure. Of course, none of this will happen because we keep giving away foreign aid. We keep going to foreign wars, such as, Syria, trying to say that Iranian militias were the reason. We don't even have any evidence of that. We do all kinds of things that are not in the interest of this country or its people. And I don't care what the war hawks tell you, or the people who are like, oh no, we want to outsource and we want immigrants coming in. So outsource our jobs to foreign nations and then have immigrants come in to take whatever jobs under the table at no wages or low wages under minimum wage. Both of those things are good at the same time. No, I don't think so. I really think either one of those things are good. I think outsourcing jobs would be great if we have enough jobs here. It says the ACLU said the number of immigrants in detention rose from 85,000 in 96 to nearly 16 2 years later. Okay, so it doubled. Just not quite, but, just doubled. Big deal. I mean, we actually cracked down on the bills, huh? In 2001, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled by Zavadas versus Davis that the government couldn't indefinitely hold individuals beyond 6 months if it was unlikely that ICE can actually deport them sooner. Legal experts pointed to this ruling to argue that the 1996 law didn't allow for indefinite detention, okay? And in 2008, cases Jennings versus Rodriguez, Supreme Court ruled that the detention immigrants don't have the right to periodic bond hearings during removal procedures. They're not American citizens, which means they aren't protected by our laws per se. So there are some of our constitutional laws are supposed to be extended to everybody. That's a whole other issue. And then here we have Biden's more recent stances. It says Biden campaign pointed to a measure that Biden supported that were intended to help immigrants, including the 1986 amnesty law and later the 2007 bill, the Path to Citizenship bill. This is all about votes, of course, for them, but it's beyond that. It's about one-party control, and it's about essentially getting folks who were socialistic from the get-go and who have nothing to do with American culture to come in and to continue to vote for those things and globalist style policies. It's also about urbanization and depopulating those parts of the world. It really is. So here we have, in 1992, the Democrat Party had in their platform provisions that said that illegal aliens were coming in this country, committing felonies, sent back, and then they were right back across the border to do the same thing. And that is mostly true. And that was by Matt Gaetz. And I would agree. Matt Gaetz is pretty good. Works with my wife's company. It's not her company, the company that she works for quite often, actually. And it's not like policy stuff that is impactful to the average citizen, folks. She works in animal advocacy, getting rid of bad lab tests on animals that are unnecessary. In any case, from Time Magazine, this is rather recent, if I'm not mistaken. It says millions of Americans have lost jobs in the pandemic, and robots and AI are replacing them faster than ever. So, if this is the case, what is this argument about then? The replacement migration. See, this is the big excuse that they all use. Angela Merkel said this directly, that we need to replace things. This is the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. Immigrant Swan Song. This was from March 2020. Immigration can solve the demographic dilemma, but not without the right policies. What demographic dilemma? You mean the replacement rate? Well, if the jobs are going to be gone, why do we need to replace the people? So this is why these arguments don't make sense. It says in countries such as Australia, Canada, United States, where many immigrants, especially those who have moved for economic reasons, assimilate to the labor force quickly, the case for more immigration is built on its potential economic benefits. Research shows that immigration does not reduce the capital intensity of the economy, but rather it allows firms to expand and investments to adjust, and it also promotes innovation and growth, especially when highly skilled immigrants are admitted. This is legal immigration, not illegal. Not mass migrant immigration, though. And here we go. It says, yet the discussion over immigration often pays insufficient attention to the Achilles heel of the global north. And I've told you before, this is about depopulating the South and moving them all into the northern hemisphere. It's also about getting a people that are easily controlled, that will vote for globalism. It's about the multiculturalism. It's about breaking the spirit of the individualistic Western liberal ideology. And I mean the classical 18th century, 17th century liberal ideology of freedom. The idea that people have their own destiny and don't have rulers ruling over them, and that they may own property and have property rights and go about their life doing whatever they wish as long as they do not impact negatively, purposefully, the lives of others, as long as they do not hurt them. They're not violent. They don't take from them. Those kind of things, right? Fertility in these countries currently stands at 1.7 and fell below replacement. That is, the level at which the population exactly replaces itself from one generation to the next around 1980. Consequently, the difference in birth rates and death would promote population decline and subsequent increase in average ages in the North, both of which could disrupt labor markets, threaten the financial stability of pension systems, and slow down economic growth unless total net immigration offsets such declines. Wrong, wrong, wrong. And I'll tell you why, once again. Because of this. Millions of Americans have lost jobs in the pandemic, and robots and AI are replacing them faster than ever. And it's much of the speak that a lot of people are talking about. Oh, learn to code, do all those things, because that's how we're going to get, these new jobs are going to come about. Well, people are talking about automated cars and truck drivers and how they're going to lack jobs. Why is immigration going to be a solution and not more of a problem then? That's the question, right? Why is it a solution? When more people come in and there's less work to go around, how does that solve the problem of, replacing the jobs in the labor market? That's why this is wrong. The agenda of the globalist is to depopulate the rural areas and move them into urban areas. It's pretty simple. And this is in part of their globalist environmentalist death cult, where they have to save Mother Earth at the expense of humanity. I don't think it's an either-or situation, but it's what they talk about. If you go look up Hans Rosling, who died a few years ago, he was an economist who studied population growth, and he saw that we were going to cap in our population, I think by 2050, might be a little bit later than that. But we're going to cap off in population, and replacement rates are going to basically start to happen where we're at. I forget what it is. We're going to cap off at, I think, 10 billion, something like that within the world. And the reason why is because people will get more wealthy. And as they get more wealthy, they start using more birth control. They start planning their children out. They have more options. That seems to be the pattern. Is that a guarantee? No. But again, the arguments for replacement just do not make sense. And then here, guys, you can look up the immigration policies of Joe Biden. We pretty much see what they are. Kids in cages, catch and release. That's a big one right now. They are not, though, these kind of policies, and this is important, the Jordan Commission. This was several years ago, and it was a bipartisan effort.
Ugly fights over immigration aren't an invention of Twitter or Donald Trump or dreamers. The U.S. has been wrangling over this issue basically from the beginning. How to balance smart policy with basic humanity has always been elusive and somewhat divisive, but the chasm, specifically on immigration between these parties, has grown rapidly. One example of that is the Jordan Commission of the 90s. Congress passed the Immigration Act of 1990 with big numbers. We're talking about 89 ayes in the Senate, 264 to 118 in the House. Part of the bill called for the formation of a 9-member Commission on Legal Immigration Reform, aimed at identifying the problems already baked into the system and then ways to improve them. The Democratic president, Bill Clinton, chose the person who would ultimately chair that committee through its completion. It was former Democratic Representative Barbara Jordan, a lawyer from Texas. She had become a leading liberal voice during the Watergate years, and she was considered a party elder.
We have been the instrument of change in the past. We know what needs to be done. We know how to do it.
In 1995, the Bipartisan Commission, which came to be known as the Jordan Commission, issued a preliminary report, and then a final document in 97, which largely echoed the original findings and recommendations. A few takeaways out of all this. The Commission said, first, immigration can be very good, and civic unity is healthy. However, quote, immigrants with relatively low education and skills may compete for jobs and public services with the most vulnerable of Americans, particularly those who are unemployed
or underemployed, and that is the crux of it. Every single time. These folks are not on the books. We have all these laws and regulations. When you get a job, you must be on the books. You will have a social security number, and you will be taxed. These folks, not necessarily. and they undercut low-skilled workers who could only be paid by minimum wage, which will continue to go up because inflation continues to go up. This helps nobody. It does not help the immigrants because they remain in poverty just here in the United States. Now, maybe they have a little bit better police protection, but not really, since they're technically conducting themselves largely in a black market, in a vacuum of police protections, because they are afraid to get themselves deported. Now, you might think, well, what was the switch between the Republicans and the Democrats? When did that happen? Well, it has more to do with pandering and globalist initiatives from up top. So this is an article from The Hill about all this, but the main thing I wanted to point out here was this right here. For immigration to continue to serve our national interests, it must be lawful, she wrote. This is from the Jordan Commission. There are people who argue that some illegal aliens contribute to our community because they may work, pay taxes, send their children to our schools, in all respects except one, obey the law. And that is the one respect they don't obey the law is coming over illegally, right? Let me be clear. That is not enough. This is while she was the chair of the commission, Jordan argued that it is both a right and a responsibility of a democratic society to manage immigration so that it serves the national interest. Rarely will you hear a more succinct and relevant statement on immigration than that. And I would agree. The national interest. What is the national interest? Is it importing low-skilled workers? I don't think so. So, to Border Report, this says, catch and release resumes in South Texas. Mayor says Biden order reinstates policy. And just like that, catch and release is back with added problems. This was from February 10th, 2021. I mainly chose this because I like this little picture here where they're just climbing over that wall. Biden rescinds COVID-19 immigrant visa pause. On February 24th, President Joe Biden rescinds an April 2020 executive order that temporarily suspended the distribution of employment-based green cards. Former President Donald Trump signed April 2020 order as a reaction to the collapse of the American workforce during the COVID pandemic. Biden's order takes direct aim at President Trump's response to the pandemic. It says the April 2020 order does not advance the interests of the United States. To the contrary, it harms the United States by preventing certain family members of the United States citizens and lawful permanent residents from joining their families here. It also harms industries in the United States that utilize talent from around the world. Trump's order cited the effects of the coup on the domestic labor market. The unemployment rate in April stood at 14.8%, really high, whereas a year before it stood at just 3.7%. And during that, Trump was getting the immigration issue a little bit more under control than it has been in some years. This is a 5 to 10 year issue, though, folks. It's not going to just be resolved overnight. There will always be some illegal immigration, don't get me wrong. We're going to get into some more problems of illegal immigration here in a minute. It says, I have determined that without intervention, the United States faces a potential protracted economic recovery with persistently high unemployment and labor supply outpacing labor demands. Excessive labor supply affects all workers and potential workers, but it is particularly harmful to workers at the margin between unemployment and employment, who are typically last in during the economic expansion and first out. Again, sound advice. True. Very true. That is what happens. And it's why we, should be favoring jobs for Americans first. And those arguments, well, we Americans can't do it. No, Americans can do it. Why are foreigners better skilled than Americans? I know we have one of the worst education systems in the industrialized world, but I don't think that is really the problem, is it? I don't think it's the education system that's the problem. The problem is the fact that we don't focus on America. We don't focus on our own homes first. So, from NBC News, after Border Patrol release, asylum seekers test positive for the coup in Brownsville, Texas. And from my understanding, hundreds of migrants were caught and released and then tested positive for the COOF. And I thought that Biden himself was all about getting this under control, and that we didn't handle it properly under Trump, that he was just a xenophobe by shutting down the borders and whatever else. Must be why he's catching and releasing them. Thought this was a really deadly, horrible virus. Why are we letting migrants come in illegally and then just go about their way? So there are several NGOs providing resources to a positive case, the email states. For example, organizations help with quarantine either in a shelter or a hotel. Since the city started testing the migrants on January 25th, there has been a 6.3% of positive cases. The Cameron County positivity rate is 13.8%. Several of the asylum seekers who tested positive told Nitosius, whatever. They told Telemundo they were planning to leave Brownsville for their destination. One of them bought a bus ticket for the journey. One says who is from Honduras, tested positive. She said that she was going to take the bus to North Carolina with her 3-year-old daughter. On the way, we were wearing a mask all the time. Jill washed her hands. She said, really, I don't feel anything. Well, yeah, because the COOF's not anything to worry about for most people. But regardless, if your administration is going to say, well, it's the worst thing ever, why are you doing this policy? And folks, these are the little things constantly that they should be informing you. Hey, what's being presented out there in the world, what's being presented out there by the powers that be is hoobly Jew, if you would. It's malarkey. It's nonsense, guys. It is, and you know it. So this is from the New York Times. I had archived this to get around their illustrious paywall that they're not worth. You have to pay with your body. The hidden nightmare of sexual violence at the border. This was from 2019. Now, most of you who watch me probably already are aware of this. This was an issue that was brought up early on during the Trump presidency because the left, once again, would rather see women and children raped for thousands of miles on their way into the United States from various South American nations up through Central America and Mexico. They would rather see them raped that entire way as long as they can get to America than to go through a legal immigration process. Or at least that's the way they would frame it if the roles were reversed. I'm pretty sure they're not very pro-women's rights, and they are all about the sexual assault of migrants. It was dark in the stash house where they kept her, and the windows covered so no one could see inside. At first, the smugglers had her cook for the other migrants who had recently crossed illegally into the United States. Then they took her to a room upstairs, locked the door, and began taking turns with her. It was summer of 2014, and Melvin, a 36-year-old mother of 3, had just completed the journey from her native Guatemala, crossing the Rio Grande on a raft before being led to the house and Texas border of McAllen. For weeks in that locked room, the men she had paid to get her safely to the United States drugged her with pills and cocaine, refused to let her out even to bathe. I think that since they put me in that room, they killed me, she said. They raped us so many times, they didn't see us as human beings anymore. And they didn't even let you bathe. They're obviously horrible folks, and I'll tell you, folks, my lesser self, my instinctual self is wants to go on a little raid and murder some bad guys, which my Christian self says no, we cannot have that. But yeah, it's just a horrible thing, right? And that should, just hearing that, reading that, should enrage anyone. And this is very common. There was a study done. I could not recall who did the study. Actually, we can just look it up real quick. It's not a hard thing to do. 80% of women are sexually assaulted. type in all the buzzwords. 80% of Central American women and girls are probably shouldn't keep using the R word because I think algorithms don't like that. But abused, and that there's the Huffington Post there, folks. According to a stunning Fusion investigation, 80% of women and girls crossing into the U.S. by way of Mexico are raped during the journey. That's up from the previous estimate of 60%. Oh, because that was a lot better. This year alone, immigration authorities expect more than 70,000 unaccompanied minors to come through the United States unlawfully, the majority of whom are from Central American countries of El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. The number are unoccupied. Central American girls caught at the southwest border has rapidly outpaced the number of boys, according to the July Pew study. Through May, the number of unoccupied girls younger than 18 caught in the U.S.-Mexico border increased 77%. And we find this a lot. That's the whole coyote thing, the coyote thing that the leftists had their minds blown when President Trump said it at the debates. They're just such idiots. Every single time. They're just so idiotic. Drives me insane. Let's see, where's my article at? Here we go. So back to this. The stories are many and yet all too similar. This is the New York Times article. Undocumented women make their way to American border towns, have been beaten for disobeying smugglers, impregnated by strangers, coerced into prostitution, shackled to beds and trees, and in at least a handful of cases, bound with duct tape, rope, or handcuffed. And I'm not going to keep reading this because, guys, I don't need to. You get the point. And the left or the humanitarians, they don't want to stop this because it's all just about getting people here. No. It's about getting dumb people here. And they, the ones who prop this up, are dumb themselves. It's why they don't know what coyotes are. They don't know about this. They're uneducated. It's why the left wants the voting age to be 16 or lower. It's why they want kids who are 8 years old. Biden has said this. I don't think he believes it, but he says it because he's pandering. He wants to allow, and they want to allow, children to decide what their sexual orientation is before they are even sexual beings. They are a death cult, and they are absolutely insane. Here from NPR, sexual assault of detained migrant children reported in the thousands since 2015. Let's see. This is Need Help Paying Bills. That's the website, guys. NeedHelpPayingBills.com. Assistance for undocumented or illegal immigrants. Undocumented immigrants, that is illegal, as well as those that legally in this country can oftentimes get assistance for their needs as well. There are states that can provide governmental benefits as well as several other charities that offer help in an emergency. So this is pointing to the argument that they get assistance, and the lefties, no, they don't get assistance, or if they do, they pay taxes. No. The numbers are clear. They take more out than they put in. We know this. I'm going to show it in a minute. Guys, I'm probably going to be running long on this one today, so it might be over an hour, just to let you know. Services are often provided in many languages as well. Immigrants that speak Spanish, Mandarin, Vietnamese, and any other number of languages can apply for assistance. Now, if you're a refugee, 100%. That's a particular status, though. Political asylum, particular status that we have. Just coming across the border without going through any process is not legal. Housing programs, as noted, some assistance in general available, especially for housing, rent, medical care, I'll tell you what is definitely legal. I had illegal, but definitely has happened. I had an inmate some years ago that we had to watch on protective custody that had some farmland sort of in the area, and he had an illegal immigrant there held up in a trailer with her daughter, and he basically raped her daily and had her locked up in this trailer for over a year. And I don't know how the whole thing came about. I don't remember. It's been some years, but my Lord. You think there isn't assistance? It ain't the kind of assistance people want. So anyways, it goes on. This website's just to tell people illegal or undocumented immigrants without any form of stability may be better served by short-term emergency housing such as shelter or transitional units. Even these programs will tend to be more restricted as groups such as the Salvation Army will limit who can't use them, but they may be an option. So it's straight up just telling you, hey, this is how you can, do this. One benefit that undocumented immigrants are entitled to is food as well as general hunger prevention. The federal government, in fact, requires states to offer this solution to migrants, migrant farm workers, immigrants, and even refugees. There are a few different options. Illegal immigrants with new babies or even pregnant women can apply for Women, Infant, and Children. That is WIC. This provides for a free voucher for us to use to buy formula and other critical foods. First off, guys, I don't like any of this. I don't like this for American citizens. I like this only if the church does it. I like this if your community, your neighborhood does it. I like this if your friends and your family do it. I don't like this when the government does it because it just opens up the door. It's a slippery slope, and we've seen the slippery slope go down, quite down the rabbit hole of what the government is supposed to be providing. And we're talking about free healthcare here in the United States now, which isn't going to be free, folks. Undocumented children under the age of 5 can get free meals, food, and a head start. Yep. Healthcare for undocumented immigrants. Our first option in emergency Medicaid. Both the federal government as well as the state contribute to this benefit. It is legally required to be offered to all people in this country, whether they are legal or not. So an immigrant can have a portion of their medical bills paid by giving lost cost prescription drugs and other health care. Call a local social services. Yeah. Illegal immigrants often turn to sliding fee or free community clinics for their medical care as well. So anyone trying to say that illegal immigrants do not get charity and do not live on the welfare state are just wrong. And we could go further and further into this. Factcheck.org says otherwise, the mythical Florida mom and other false claims about immigrants. This was from May 14, 2010. Does an illegal immigrant in Florida get $15 a month for each of her 8 children? No, illegal immigrants don't qualify for welfare or food stamps. A chain email from a disabled Vietnam vet is full of misinformation. So then here we go through the chain email. It's a freaking chain email. You're going to fact check this stuff. I get it. People are dumb. They go on the internet and then they read your dumb stuff too. Full answer. Just about everything this chain email regarding the benefits to illegal immigration to refuse as pure bunk. And the photo, however, is a real person. D. Lynn Morris of Chinell and West Washington State. He confirms that he originated the message, sent to Okay. Fortunately, the claims Morrison passed are simply wrong. His message claimed that there was a 25-year-old illegal immigrant woman living in Florida with 8 kids who receives, There's no such woman. The state does not provide benefit, She's not 25, guys. She is been in the United States for 25 years. This is the story right here. Fox News covered it many moons ago.
Milk, bread.
By the 3rd week of the month, Maritza Nelson's $240 in food stamps has run out, leaving her $9 in cash and 7 people to feed.
Zero on the food stamp and $4 in child support. That's what I got.
Yet the 50-year-old single mother who entered the U.S. by swimming across the Rio Grande has government-funded housing, medication, and $700 a month in Social Security. She's been on assistance for 20 years and wants others to know that help is available.
When you really, really need it, go look for help before it's too late.
That message is heard in Florida,
For full Medicaid,
where expert navigators now help clients apply online for multiple federal aid programs at the same time.
and what's your marital status?
The goal of the recruiters who say they are privately funded is to increase federal aid to Florida by $1 billion a year.
$1 billion a year. Need to increase that federal aid to Florida, one of the richest states in the union, because they have a really, really, really great tourist economy. So, here in the description, this is from Michael Savage for Prez. It says, illegal immigrant mother of 7, Marita Nelson, receives $240 in food stamps, medication, $7 Social Security, and housing allowance. She entered the U.S. by swimming the Rio Grande, yada, yada, yada. This is an old Fox News thing. You can go find it, check it out if you would like. It happens, guys. You're kidding yourself if you think it doesn't. So this is from Fiscal Tiger. And hold on. It says, can illegal immigrants get welfare in the United States? In short, no. Illegal immigrants cannot receive the benefits of welfare in the United States. Are you talking semantics here? Because it's not the case. The laws haven't changed. Qualified versus unqualified. Before we can definitively answer the big question, it's important to understand who is qualified for welfare programs in the United States. Okay? Lawful permanent residences, refugees. People granted parole by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Cuban and Haitian. Certain abused immigrants, their children, certain survivors of trafficking. Yeah. Welfare. Let's determine exactly what type of welfare we're discussing. In general, we are referring to social welfare and federal assistance programs such as Supplemental Assistance Program, Medicaid, Supplemental Security Income, SSI, temporary assistance, and so forth. It's important to note that undocumented immigrants can be eligible for emergency Medicaid, as well as special supplemental nutrition programs for women, infant, and children, state-level programs. The Center for Immigration Studies found that in 2014, 63% of households headed by non-citizen used at least one welfare program, compared to 35% of native households. So twice the rate. Welfare uses dropped to 58% for non-citizen households and 30% for native households if cash payments from the earned income. Okay, so they get a child tax credit. Children of immigrants. There is a major problem, however, with this study mentioned above. It only looked at households, not individuals, because children born in the U.S. are eligible for welfare programs, and this is a problem with our 14th Amendment and the way that these things are applied. And the idea was to make anyone who was already a citizen, who was a freed slave, just have citizenship. It wasn't necessarily to say anyone born here was automatically a citizen when their parents are from a foreign nation. It goes back to old common law and what was accepted. So from FAIR, immigration and welfare. Despite being known as the land of opportunity, every year more and more immigrants, both legal and illegal, end up on public assistance, even though they are prohibited from accessing certain entitlement programs. Welfare dependency among the foreign-born is higher than among native-born Americans. This is problematic because it further strains our social safety net. By the way, folks, anyone who's arguing on the left that, well, they pay into it. Guys, you're morons. You are being taxed at a higher rate than you are ever getting back services from. If that were not true, we could not give trillions or billions or whatever we're giving of foreign aid out to the world annually. We can't be bailing out like major corporations and everything because of the coup. Like, where do you think this money comes from? Most of it, granted, they just print out of thin air and inflate everything. But like, stop with the like 3-year-old economics, because that's what you're living under. This naive, like, it's not even 3-year-old economics. It's kindergarten economics. You understand, like oh, Billy has an apple. If you take one apple away, or Billy has 2 apples, you take one apple away, and now Billy has 1. How many apples does Billy have? Like, we need to get a little bit more complex, not overly complex here, but we need to understand that what you pay in is not the services you're getting back. And the services you're getting back are actually they're rendering you, they're they're making you poor. They're over time they're rendering your family, your children's and your grandchildren's ability to accumulate wealth for themselves just absolutely obsolete. That potentiality absolutely is going to be stripped from you and your ancestors, your progeny. And the reason why is because of inflation. It's just how it works, guys. And we cannot be giving away all this money and being taxed so much and have this giant federal government build up and then say, well, no, but they pay into it. No, it's a net burden on everybody. The whole system, the whole game is rigged as a net burden. It's a big cycle of net burden to keep us in debt slavery. The immigrants currently being admitted to the U.S. are less skilled and less educated than the native population, which means that they are more likely to inhabit lower income brackets and require public assistance in 2017. The share of foreign-born individuals, 14.5%, and non-citizens, 18.6%, living below the poverty line is much higher than the share of native-born Americans living in poverty, 11.9%, according to U.S. Census Bureau data. Let me remind you, by the way, folks, of it wasn't this. Where are we at here? No, that's Enoch Powell. I must have. Oh, no, is it here? Yes, there it is. There it is. I want to remind you of this, of what Miss Jordan said, and how that illegal immigration works for them at that time in the early 90s. Really hasn't changed much, has it? Nope, not in 30 years. Hasn't changed a bit. Given their higher poverty rates, it is unsurprising that the data shows immigrants are more dependent on welfare programs than native-born Americans. So, regardless of all of this, we can go through the root of the problem, which is down here in the 1965 Immigration Act and the solution. And FAIR is a pretty decent organization on this as far as I'm concerned. But these people are moving from poverty back into poverty. It doesn't help anybody. If you want to look at this issue on immigration in the modern age, we can look at, let's see if I get a title screen up here. Nope, not going to work. Anyways, we can look at Lauren Southern's Borderlands that she did the other year. It's a pretty good documentary of immigration in Europe. And there are folks that go, oh, no, she lied about this or that. I don't think that she did, because you should see her conclusions. I think it's a pretty fair documentary, actually. The problem is that people are ideologues. They don't want to believe anything that they do not believe in, that doesn't fit into their ideology. They can't absorb things that are outside their sphere. They're like, oh, that conflicts with what I believe? How dare you? Yeah, that you're absurd. Like, you need to hear ideas you don't believe, and you need to suss out if they're true or not on their merit. Here we have this little video I found from Fox Business from 3 years ago. Illegal immigrants stole $361,000 from welfare in California. Now that's a drop in the bucket, guys, especially California and all their debt. Here from Fox News, land of the free, senator says immigration stats show the welfare rules not enforced. Most illegal immigration, this is from 2019, most illegal immigrants in the U.S. receive government benefits costing taxpayers billions. I mean, the articles are everywhere. Welfare benefits for non-citizens. This is from the Brookings Institute, and it gets into the history of it. You can look at it. This is a 2002 article. The Brookings Institute is left-leaning. But you can see they go back into the origins, and they talk about it. It's not like the left today in being just pro anything that is not on the right, and completely naive and basically retarded, for lack of better words. Center for Immigration Studies. Low immigration and pro-immigration all at the same time. It's amazing. You can be both. Welfare use by legal and illegal immigration household, an analysis of Medicaid, cash, food, and housing programs. And it basically looks at the same thing. An estimated 49% of households headed by legal immigrants use one or more welfare programs. Households headed by illegal immigrants have higher use rates than native households overall, and cash programs 14% versus 10%, food programs 36% versus 22%, Medicaid 39% versus 23%. And these are programs that basically, if they're going to folks who aren't citizens, means that we're wasting our money, isn't it? That we should be putting in other places, like, I don't know, infrastructure. Because I hate to sound like someone who is a statist, but who will build the roads? Like, guys, we have crumbling roads all over the place, bridges, just crazy, crazy infrastructure issues. The water issue in Flint, Michigan, I'm pretty sure was solved a while back, but maybe it's not. I don't know. But these things are just rampant everywhere. We see the deterioration of our cities, places like Detroit, which have fallen apart, Baltimore, which, you know, I haven't been to in a while, but man, used to go down there quite a bit because I'm not that far away. And Baltimore is absolutely, utterly just hollowed out. It's horrible. But yeah, we need to bring these people from these third world nations in who don't have any skills. And then we need to let them be on the welfare state. And then we need to give them citizenship so they can keep voting for that welfare state, right? This isn't about that. It's not about replacement rates. It's about moving people from the South here. It's about globalist control. It's about the global economy. It's about the global one world government, and it's about environmentalism, and that's what it all comes back to. Not real environmentalism, just environmentalism that they like. U.S. Commission on Immigration Reform. Again, this is from FAIR in 2003. You guys can look at that. I have a couple other things. Immigrationreform.com. Here's an NPR article on Epoch. I call him Epoch. Enoch Powell. But that is pretty much it, guys. A lot of information. It's a very broad, very big subject. So what can you gather from all this? Well, one, leftists are going to tell you that illegal immigration is good. They do that by conflating the two because no one is illegal. No one is illegal, as AOC once said. That's nonsense. Is murder illegal? Is a murderer someone you want in your society? Would you invite a murderer over to your house? Now, I'm not saying people can't change, because I actually do believe in that change. I think that people change when they have a spiritual experience. They can change greatly if they choose to stay on course. But is that what we're talking about here? Or we're just talking about bringing people in to give them opportunity? Well, who should be first to the table? Even Christ said, folks, Christ had a woman come up to him and was like, would you bless me? And he's like, well, first to the children of Israel. And she said, well, even dogs get scraps from the table. And he did bless her because of her faith, because she was a Gentile. Christ came to the Jews first. Little Christian history there. Little Christian trivia. And was meant to come to the Jews first because the Jews were the emissary to bring in God's message to the world. But it was to go to the Gentiles. And in that case, Christ showed pity on the woman because of her faith. But again, he said, I got to take care of Israel first. And it's the same thing. We take care of our house first. If you look at all of the things in the Bible, at least in the New Testament, it talks about helping out folks, the poor, and this and that. They're always talking about the church. You can help others in need outside the church. Of course, you should. But they're talking about taking care of the problems within the church first. And then they're telling people in the church not to be a burden upon the church. Interesting. Because you're taking care of people who can't take care of themselves. The cripples and the widows and the children. Folks, we have kids in cages right now, once again. Not framed that way, unless you're on the right. We have kids that are caught and released, just roaming out in the wilderness. We have people that are sex trafficked. We have all kinds of problems with this issue, and it's been going on for decades, and the left wishes to make it an issue of humanitarianism when they are the ones in their death cult actually enabling the humanitarian atrocities. They literally are. Joe Biden, folks, he's inept. His administration is inept. They don't know what they're doing. They finally addressed this, I believe, today, saying that it is a crisis at the border. They created it because he was like, oh, no, oh, yeah, I'm going to suspend deportations. I'm going to look for a path to asylum and blah, 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 blah. What he should have done was kept up with the Trump policies. And, hey, now we have locals, county officials and state officials trying to figure out how they can secure their own borders. Joe Biden should have stuck to this Rotary Club speech. 700-mile border.
Now, I know I'm not supposed to say it that bluntly, but they're the facts. They're the facts. And so everything else we do is in between here. Everything else we do is at the margin. The reason why why I believe the fence is needed is not related to immigration as much as to drugs. I'm the guy that goes to national crime bill. I'm the guy that goes to national drug trafficking. I'm the guy. I
like how he's bragging about how he wrote the crime bill and the drug trafficking. He's the guy. He's the guy. He's the guy. Everything, once again, he says, no, not going to do. If that doesn't tell you that he's a puppet, I don't know what will, folks. I don't know what will. But, hey, let the globalists have their little plans. Let the world be destroyed. Let my voice be muted. I mean, hell, I am recording this video, and I might put it up, and YouTube might yank it down. So it's hard to say. But there is a lot to this issue, and the bottom line is that it's hard to fix because you have all of these, megalomaniacs and sycophants in the federal government who want to remain in power, and bringing in immigrants also allows them to, globalize America instead of allowing America to be different. We were once very different, and now we're becoming like the rest of the world, as Israel did, and it will be to our demise. Hey guys, with all that said, please like, share, subscribe. Go check out my links. Remember, the live show. I do have a live show. I will be back, as today is Friday. So happy Friday, happy weekend. I will be back Monday with more content as I do this Monday through Friday. Otherwise, I'm going to enjoy my weekend, and I hope you all do too. That's about all I have, folks. Hope you have a good weekend. Please like, share, subscribe, and I wish you all well.